What do you genuinely not understand? I remember when I looked at the typical solar system models where Earth is just a few solar radiuses away from the Sun, I felt like something was wrong. If the Sun really was that big, it would basically cover half of the sky during the day. Turns out, the Sun really is that big, but the distance is grossly misrepresented. Later I discovered the site, https://jashworth.com/dev/pixelspace/pixelspace_solarsystem.html. Scrolling through the solar system gives a whole new feeling on what size the universe is. It's breathtaking. I read an article about entropy and the expansion of the universe. It's not that complicated to understand the principles of our current views, summed up like this. The universe expanded out of one singularity. Therefore, the universe emerged out of every point in our current universe as this all was one point. The universe expands faster the further we look, no matter where in the universe you are located. To grasp that, imagine you're driving a car on the freeway and the car behind you is driving 5 miles per hour. You are driving 10 miles per hour and the car in front of you 20 miles per hour and so on. Every car is double as fast as the car behind and half as fast as the car in front of them. The universe is eternal. It's not. However, the universe that you have dimensional access to is comparable to the surface of a soap bubble. If you can only exist on the surface of it, you will never find an ending. It will never end. It likely will. Entropy will kill everything. At one point, every atom in the universe will reach its equilibrium potential. Then, no star will be there and no interaction will happen. It'll take a while though. You said please explain? Okay, briefly. I have a computer. You have a computer. We connect our computers to a giant interconnected grid that allows us to communicate. We each get an address on that grid. You tell me your grid address and that if I go there, you have a picture I can see. I point my computer at your address, and the grid is used to communicate the picture to me. This is the Internet. Advanced Topics, DNS. So I don't have to remember your complicated numeric address. Protocol. Language/rules/communication procedures. Our computers will communicate in. Routing. Grid is a mess. How does my address find a path to your address? NAT. Main reason your home router exists. We ran out of grid addresses, so we divided them public and private. NAT makes the Internet like a grid of apartment buildings, one public address that is on the global grid, on your router, but each device on your home network, individual apartment units, gets a private address. Try sending mail to Unit 24B, a private address. Ain't happening. But, mail to 123E. Main Street Unit 24B works fine. Now you only need one public address to represent your 50 devices. And, that is the explanation you specifically asked not to give. Every atom just has a little magnetic field, and when they're all pointing in the same direction it all adds up to a big magnetic field. In most materials they point randomly so there's no overall field. So why do atoms have magnetic fields? Because magnetic fields are created by moving electrons and atoms have electrons orbiting them. Electromagnets are actually just coils of wire pushing electrons around in circles. Atoms also have electrons going in circles, basically, around them. Why does moving electrons create a magnetic field? I'm not sure anyone has any fucking clue. They just pull on each other when they're moving for some reason, and magnets fundamentally remain a mystery. The universe. Either it always existed, which is a thermodynamic nightmare which makes no sense because how can a chain of events not have a start, or it did have a start, which is preposterous because time, space-time, is a product of expansion. There literally was no before the Big Bang because there was no time to have a point in to call before. Ontologically, one of these statements has to be at least nominally true, but both are fucking bananas. I just feel like I'm missing something about the real world, and since I'm 17, I'm only a couple of years off it. I felt exactly the same way at your age. There is no magic knowledge behind any of it. For a mortgage, you call up a bank and ask how you get a mortgage. That's it. When you rent your first place, to get the electricity in your name, your bills sent to you, You just call up the electricity company and say you moved and ask how you get started. To pay your taxes, you read the instructions. There is also an IRS helpline. If you're American, you can also hire someone for not much money to do it for you. Nothing happens when you become an adult where you suddenly have any answers. You just ask for answers when you encounter a new situation. You'll never stop coming across new situations. How do you get a wedding venue? You call up places and ask, how do you clean the umbilical cord site on a newborn? Ask the nurses at the hospital or the pediatrician. How do you sign your kid up for school? Call up and ask, how do you sign up to start a retirement account? Call up and ask, how do you get your Medicare and Social Security, or your country's equivalent, when you're old? There will be a number. Call up and ask. My friend works at a halfway house where people regularly smear shit on the walls in the bathroom. When I first heard that I thought, wow, they sound like the worst people in the world. But the people who work at the halfway house are generally pretty sanguine about the whole regularly having shit smeared on the walls in the bathroom thing. The reason is because, apparently, when a human is really stressed out, like well beyond their breaking point, they often respond by desperately trying to exert some kind of control over their environment. At the halfway house, where the junkies have completely lost control of their lives, they poop in their hand and smear the shit on the walls because it's the only thing nobody can stop them from doing. They're allowed to be alone in the bathroom. Nobody can stop them from having their own shit. So on the walls it goes. The last, most desperate, most pathetic assertion of the only kind of power they perceive they have left, pointlessly aimed at the staff of the halfway house. People who drive a loud car through a neighborhood aren't hitting rock bottom like that, but they're lashing out in a similar way. They probably feel helpless and scared and angry in a very broad, systemic way. If they didn't make their car go VRRR and annoy everyone, they would need to impotently express control in some other way. It's a cry for help from someone who is unfortunately afraid or incapable of expressing their frustration in a healthier way. Put your hand out the window of the car at an angle and it goes up because you are diverting a high enough mass of air downward fast enough. Lift. Of course your hand also gets pushed back quite a lot. Drag. Design a shape that pushes air down more efficiently with less pushback. Airfoil. And slap an engine on there to push forward. Thrust. More than the remaining pushback. I don't understand why a lot of kids are taught to blindly respect adults just because they're older. Anyone can be an asshole. It doesn't matter how many years they've avoided dying. I got scolded for talking back to some asshole I live near, because he's an adult and I'm a child. But that doesn't make it okay for him to have been an asshole in the first place. If you want respect, then don't be a dick. It's a simple concept. I agree. I think this blind acceptance of what adults say can be damaging to the development of a child's critical thinking. Adults can be wrong, or biased, or even deliberately misleading. Even to children. Children should be taught to judge what they've been told based on the merit of who they're talking to, what they are being told, and the context in which they are told. It can be difficult to make decisions about what to believe, but it's something everyone has to learn at some point. Might as well let them have a head start on it. A small amount of unquestioned respect is needed so that kids don't just run into roads or leave classrooms because they're bored. Nuance is a tricky thing for adults, let alone people much newer to the world, so understanding the difference between respect that will keep you alive or let me take a register efficiently and respect for some dickhead adult who is just trying to control you is hard. I'm not a native speaker and wondered the same. Then someone explained to me that there is a big difference between learning a language primarily through listening and speaking your mother language as a small child, or through writing and learning the rules. Their sound the same. So if intuitive learning was first, you have a harder time doing it right than if you first saw it written. Cryptocurrency. I've read numerous articles about how it works, and despite having degrees in both law and in math, I still don't get it. The blockchain thing, yeah, okay, maybe, But mining for new coins makes absolutely no sense. Add in the massive energy suck and I just kinda hope they all tank. NFTs I was able to figure out once I realized how asinine the very concept is. Hey, I paid $1 million for a picture that I can't hang my living room, donate to a museum, or stop anyone online from looking at. Cool. Mining is just a way to incentivize people to confirm what transactions happened and should be added to the ledger in a way where if they're wrong it costs real money. That's the whole core idea. The new coins are just a payment for confirming transactions and adding a set of transactions to the ledger. If you don't make being wrong cost money, then you can just spam the network with confirmations for transactions that didn't happen. The core mechanism, proof of work, was actually invented as a proposal to make sending an email cost a very small amount of money. To make spam not viable, you would have to prove you did work, spend some amount of electricity, in order to be allowed to send an email. Sending millions of emails would then be expensive. Proof of stake is the same basic idea, but they just burn the coins themselves instead. I want to answer this one. It is entropy. When you go to the mall and there is the giant round bowl-like thing and you put the coin on and it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, society is like that. It takes a lot of energy to push it into something new, or out of something old, that helps keep it stable, and in most cases ignorant as well. Suppose you want to make a bench. Each leg needs 2 bolts, 2 nuts, and 4 washers. You have 4 legs total. How many of all of them do you need? Now what if the bolts are 25 cents, the nuts are 15 cents, and the washers are 10 cents? What will all of that cost? Now if we throw in a 10% tax with a 10% discount, will the price change? If you can answer that, you just did algebra. These are just filler terms for literally anything. Actually, baking bacon is amazing. It's easy, and you don't get bacon grease splattered everywhere. Depending on the cut of bacon, put the bacon on a baking sheet, put it in the oven, and then turn the oven on to anywhere between 350 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time the oven is up to temperature, the bacon is done. You can adjust this if you like crispier bacon. I have researched this many times, but try as I might, I still cannot wrap my head around why speakers work. Not just how they work, copper wrapped around magnets, mostly, but why it do what it do. Like, how TF does copper wrapped around magnets with a cone attached to it make all these sounds? It makes my brain crunch just thinking about it. It can seem bizarre, until you realize that everything you ever heard in all your life, all these sounds, has been nothing more than waves of air molecules hitting your eardrum, and the sequence of events that produces. So, I'll suggest that what is really amazing is not that speakers can reproduce waves of air molecules, which is trivial, but how your brain is able to distinguish infinitesimal time progressive differences in those waves of air molecules, so that we perceive them as all these sounds. Both mental illness and chronic migraines are so deeply rooted in all of my memories that make up who I am. I don't know who I am without them. I still don't have relief from some of the symptoms either, and sometimes it feels like nothing will end up working for me. Perhaps I am just destined to be in pain and unstable for all of my life. It's wild to me that other people don't have to think like that. I don't know if this is how they do it for official stuff, but my 9th grade science teacher showed us one way to calculate calories. He took some various foods and dehydrated them completely. Water contains 0 calories, so everything that remains has the same calorie count as before the dehydration process. Then he burned the food, and took note of how much time passed before the fire went out, leaving behind ash. With some fancy math, you can plug in that amount of time to figure out how much energy was released during the burn. Calories are a unit of energy measurement, so one conversion later you have the answer. Here in the UK we used to have a really scummy company called Brighthouse. They sold luxury items to people who couldn't afford them by charging a weekly rate with massively over-the-top credit charges. They deliberately targeted people who made poor financial decisions or who were outright in poverty. I remember seeing a PS4 being offered that would have cost £1,200 in total. A £900 markup. The same thing could be seen in store with sofas, US-style fridges, big screen TVs etc. Thankfully the government watchdog hit them with a substantial fine for being an irresponsible lender and in order to pay compensation to the people it had treated unfairly. This coupled with COVID lockdowns caused the collapse of the company. Cheaters, especially serial cheaters. Why do you need to cheat instead of leave the relationship? And if you know that you're not capable of committing to one person only, why not just embrace that and be in a poly relationship with someone else who gets IT? Like you're so unhappy with yourself that you're going to literally destroy the person that loves you, the person that loves only you, the person waiting at home for you, trusting that they're the only one in your world. None of all would like it if the role was reversed. It's like the thrill for you people is to cause pain to the other person. It's sick. Reversed racism and the need to generalize humanity as either colonizer or colonized. I'm part white and Native American. I grew up being bullied by both whites and natives. I see it as nothing but racism, not reversed racism. That isn't a thing. People of color blatantly show hate towards white people just for being white, and then they blame their problems on their race and the fact that they can't control it. It's so hypocritical and seems like an excuse to be racist. At the end of the day, humanity has a bad history of treating each other like trash, but that doesn't give people the right to hate and take revenge on the basis of race and history they weren't alive to take responsibility for. Examples like slavery, colonization, etc. In no way do I feel oppressed or treated poorly by the system in any way due to my skin color, and I recognize my privilege in that and cannot argue with that. Systemic racism against white people does not exist in the US, but non-systemic, just personal. You can't tell me that fuck white people and whites are evil and all of that stuff is not racist. Personal racism against white people exists, just as personal racism exists against every race. Systemic racism against white people does not exist, in the US, at least. Thomas Sowell is brilliant, if not a little boring, just like every other economist. He makes so many good comparisons with stuff. One of my faves is how he links crime rates in NYC with air conditioner sales. As soon as everyone bought aircon and started sleeping inside at night, then there was a lot more thefts going on at night, because there were less witnesses on the street. Sex. Biological. You got male, female, intersex. Sex is your hardware. Gender. Social construct and identity. You got man, woman, non-binary. Gender is your software. Cisgender. Software and hardware line up from the beginning. Transgender. Software and hardware aren't aligned from the beginning. Aftermarket mods may be needed. Attraction. Who you fancy. You got opposite attraction, same attraction. Both, or neither. Here we get bisexuality, homosexuality, asexuality, heterosexuality, demisexuality, etc. Queer, a broad identity encompassing basically everything that isn't the standard cisgender opposite attraction. Lesbian and gay and bi and asexual, attraction, trans, intersex, hardware and software, and others. All non-standard setups can be broadly under the queer umbrella. It's certainly a lot. There's more than one axis and people are complicated. Okay, so at one point I was on an antidepressant that killed my libido, and would not let me hit a climax. Imagine trying and trying and trying and just getting nowhere and ending extremely sexually frustrated and ultimately feeling like your body is broken. It took me a long time to be okay with it. I'm off that med now, but it can still be difficult sometimes on my new meds. Essentially, it isn't about the destination. It's about the journey. I can recognize that when I'm not going to be able to sometimes, and then it boils down to did it feel good, and did I have fun? If yes to both, then it was good sex. The universe. Either it always existed, which is a thermodynamic nightmare which makes no sense because how can a chain of events not have a start, or it did have a start, which is preposterous because time, space-time, is a product of expansion. There literally was no before the Big Bang because there was no time to have a point in to call before. Ontologically, one of these statements has to be at least nominally true, but both are fucking bananas. Also, a quote that always sent shivers down my spine: two possibilities exist, either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke.